in a galaxy called Ossaren, 6.14 billion light-years from our own. An orange-yellow star burns steadily in its own quiet corner. A single rocky world orbits it. On that world, a civilization has been carrying a gift on its shoulders for 1800 years. And the gift has been waiting all that time for one specific thing to happen. The world is called Drassenor. The people who live on it call themselves the Drassek. They are tall and upright, and they have been building cities for about 150,000 years. By the time our story starts, they have railroads, telegraph lines, coal furnaces, and rifles that fire bolt-action smokeless powder rounds. In every practical sense, they are at Earth's late 1800s. They also have something no other civilization has ever had. It grows on the shoulders of their soldiers. It is soft enough to sleep in and hard enough to stop a rifle round. It is alive. They call it the cauldron. The cauldron is not a machine. It is a colony organism, the way coral is a colony organism. A single colony wraps a soldier like a thin second skin from the jaw downward. On command, it stiffens. Fine dark webbing across the chest and shoulders and forearms locks itself, in about a second, into matter plates the color of slate. Nothing on Drassenor cuts through those plates. Nothing pierces them. When the soldier relaxes, the plates soften again. The face is always visible. The cauldron covers the body, but never the head. A protector who wears it can still be seen and spoken to and named. The soldiers who carry the cauldron are called the Vaskir. They are not chosen. They are inherited. Each colony passes from one protector to the next by a ceremony called the bonding rite. When a Vaskir dies, the colony walks off the body during the funeral preparations, folds itself, and waits to be transferred to the next protector. It has been done, more or less this way, for 1800 years. It started with a hunter named Vasik Drellen. 1800 years ago, he fell into a hole in the ground during a drought and came back wearing something that had been waiting in that hole to be worn. The cauldron was not, in the Drassek imagination, a weapon. It was a gift. There are exactly 17,341 cauldron colonies on Drassenor. That is the number. It has been the number for 1,400 years. For the first 4 centuries after the first bonding, scholars traveled the planet looking for more of them. The cauldron lives in one specific kind of place. Ancient pockets of very salty water sealed underground when the planet's original ocean collapsed billions of years ago. Wherever they found a sealed pocket, they opened it. Wherever they found a colony inside, they brought it up. By 1,400 years ago, every accessible pocket on the planet had been checked, and a naturalist named Vorek Anson wrote a decree that has been on every official document since. No more seams. The count is closed. Since that day, the count has never risen. Every one of the 17,341 colonies alive today is the same colony that was alive 1,400 years ago. They do not die. They do not reproduce. The number is kept under seal by a civilian body called the Register. The Register has tracked every bonded colony, every bonding rite, and every death of a Vaskir since it was founded 1780 years ago. Nobody outside the register is supposed to know the number. Not a priest, not a king, not a general. The number is a state secret because it is also the exact upper bound of the civilization's total martial power. It is easy to underestimate one colony because you carry it on one soldier's shoulders. One colony is made of about 35 trillion cells. That is roughly the same cell count as the Drassenor body it lives on. Across all 17,341 colonies, that is about 600 quadrillion cauldron cells alive on the planet right now. To put a number on that, it is about 30 times the total number of ants alive on Earth today. Very large, also. And this is the part that will matter later, finite. Every Vaskier who dies takes about 35 trillion cauldron cells with them. Permanently. For most of 1400 years, the trip down was slow. Small wars, small losses, long peace in between. Then the ledger got steep. The long peace ended 40 years ago. The peace that broke had lasted almost 14 centuries. In that time, 4 regions had settled into an uneven arrangement. The Belenar throne in the central Riverlands held the crown. The Crescent League on the northern plains held the factories. The Ossaren Compact in the southern canyon country held the mines and the grain. The fourth was a merchant league scattered across all 3 continents, an 8-city confederation called Malorn. Malorn held the banks and the telegraph exchanges. The break, when it came, was about rail tariffs and the vote. Crescent's workers had built the rail network that moved coal and grain across the whole planet. They wanted a voice in the throne's councils that matched what they had built. The throne refused. Crescent seceded. Soren declared against both of them a year later. Over grazing land treaties, Crescent's mobilization had broken. Malorn declared its own neutrality and began, quietly and profitably, selling rifles and shells to all 3. This is what people mean when they say the fracture wars. There is no villain in this war. There is a Crescent general named Ossaren running an offensive in the eastern corridor. There is a Soren commander named Dragan Molen, himself a Vaskier, dispersing his own protectors in small teams to keep his losses down. None of them are wrong. None of them are heroes. The Vaskier fight on all 4 sides. This has never happened before, and neither has this. They fight on all 4 sides in modern industrial conditions. They still close at bayonet range because they are still the only entities on any battlefield reliably armored against a rifle round. But the battlefields around them have changed. There is rifled artillery now, firing shrapnel from half a mile out. There are troop trains that can put 10,000 soldiers on a single line of ground in a single day. The cauldron was not designed for this. Nothing was designed for this. Nobody designed the cauldron at all. The cauldron was inherited. By the 35th year of the war, the fighting had settled. Most of it was now happening in a single 70-mile band of ground in Belenor's southern interior. It is called the Ossaren Corridor. The corridor is a long, shallow trough between 2 lines of shale hills. It has one thing worth wanting: a rail spur that connects Crescen's forward supply depot to the Belenar throne's grain country. Both sides wanted it. Neither side had taken it in 5 years. Instead, both sides had built trench lines and battery emplacements up and down the ridges. They had fought the same engagement, more or less, again and again. The casualties from those engagements had begun to concentrate. Earlier in the war, when the fronts moved, the dead were spread across whole continents. In the corridor, the dead were spread across a few square miles. In the last 5 years, in a rough patch of ground perhaps 40 miles long, the war had killed more Vaskier than the whole first 35 years combined. The Belenar throne did not notice, not because generals do not count, but because generals count what they lose in each engagement. They do not usually add across 5 years. The register did. By the 40th year of the war, the concentration was showing up in the numbers. The register dispatched a small team to walk the field after the next major engagement. 4 naturalists and 2 guards. Their orders were to observe, catalogue, and file a report on the physical condition of a battlefield after industrial-scale casualties. They had walked battlefields before. They arrived on the 4th day after the guns had gone quiet. At first, the field looked like every other field. The dead had been carried off. The Vaskier on both sides, the ones who had fallen where their formations had held, had been taken back behind their own lines, plates still on their bodies, for the transfer rights their factions owed them. What was left on the field were the ones nobody had reached in time. 60 or 70 Vaskier, still where they had fallen. Their plates were still hard. The team walked between them, taking notes. Then the second naturalist, working around a group of 4 fallen protectors near the base of a ridge, called the others over. The plates on those 4 were still hard. That was normal. What was not normal was that the plates were not only on the 4. A thin, dark growth had spread from their shoulders out onto the ground beside them. It ran from body to body, a low webbing across the dirt. Beyond that webbing, at the base of the ridge, the same dark webbing was thickening into a low mound. The mound was on ground where nobody had died. The naturalist crouched and looked at it more carefully. The color was right. The texture was right. The plates on the 4 Vaskier and the growth on the ground were the same organism. The cauldron was reproducing. The senior naturalist wrote a single word in the margin of her field notebook, a word no Belenar naturalist had used in a scientific document in living memory. Skoranath, the Crescen folk monster, the colony that wakes up and eats a city. Nobody who saw her write it laughed. To understand what Survey 04 was looking at, you have to go back a long way. Much further back than the Drassek. Much further back than any Drassek scholar had ever thought to look. Drassenor is about 5.5 billion years old. For the first billion years of its history, most of the surface was covered by a shallow global ocean of very salty water. In that ocean, one of the earliest forms of life to arise was a mineralizing colony biofilm, a thin sheet of cooperating cells that built a hard mineral matrix around themselves and fed by breaking down other dead cells to reuse the minerals. That biofilm is what the cauldron used to be. At around the 3.9 billion year mark, another lineage arose in the same ocean. This one used photosynthesis and released oxygen as a waste product. Oxygen is corrosive to almost anything not built to handle it. Almost nothing on Drassenor was. Within about 40 million years, most of the original biosphere was gone. The cauldron's ancestor was one of the few lineages that survived. It survived by doing something drastic. It locked down every cell in its body. Every single cell would mature once, do its job, and never divide again. That worked. The lineage lived. What it cost was the ability to make more of itself. A colony that can no longer divide its cells cannot make more colonies. Every cauldron alive today is a direct descendant, one-to-one, of the tiny founding population that made that trade 3.9 billion years ago. Except the old reproductive pathway, the one that fed on dead tissue and used the minerals to grow new colonies, was not deleted from the genome. It was locked behind a threshold. If ever there were enough dead tissue in one place, at one time, to feed a colony past a certain mass, the pathway would open. In sealed brine pockets, that threshold could never be reached. In 1800 years of Drassec civilization, it was never reached either. Small wars, distributed casualties, quick recovery of the bodies by the bonding rite. Nothing got close. The Ossaren corridor got close. Then it got over. Every priest of Scoran had been correct for 1400 years that the cauldron had never reproduced. Every priest of Scoran had been wrong about the sentence being finished. Survey 04 stayed on the field for 8 more days. They mapped the growth front. They measured it. On day 6, they realized the perimeter of the colony had crossed the original line of the battlefield and moved onto ground where nothing had died. On day 9, they extrapolated the growth rate forward. They found that at current rates, it did not level off. The curve did not flatten. The math did not offer an ending. On day 12, the senior naturalist finished her field report. She telegraphed a summary to the register in the Belenar capital of Velanath Belen. The register warden in Velanath Belen is a woman named Vesana Drell. She is a civilian. She is one of the very few people on the planet who knows the exact population of the Vaskir, the number that is not spoken during the bonding rite, the number that is kept under seal, the number that is now, by 70 or so, lower than it was a week ago. She read the telegram before she gave it to anyone in the throne's council. She sat with it for the rest of the afternoon. Then she went back to her office the next morning and read it again. She has not told anyone in any of the 4 factions yet. She does not know who to tell first. She does not know what any of them would do with it. The Crescent General Ossaren Karos is scheduled to move against the same rail spur again in 11 days. There will be another engagement. There will be more dead. There will be more substrate. Out east, on the field, the growth is still moving. The last transmission from Survey 04 ended in the middle of a sentence. The team's radio operator had been logging distances from a fixed reference point at the western edge of the survey area. His final entry recorded that the growth front had crossed that reference point. There is no entry after that. The threshold has already been crossed. The war is still on. Some years later, the war stopped mattering. Drassenor was no longer a green and blue world. From orbit, it was one color, black, pole to pole. The cauldron had never once stopped.